Draw everything in SketchUp in real-world scale. That is, draw it how it really is. If you're making a piece of jewelry that's a few millimeters across, you would just draw it that big. If you're designing a site plan that's thousands of feet across, you would just draw it that big. The only place where it really matters is in Model Info. Right here under Enable Length Snapping. If you're drawing a piece of jewelry that has measurements that are near 1/16 of an inch or smaller, you're going to want to make this value a lot smaller, say 128th of an inch or 256th. Precision has to do with how accurately SketchUp will display things to you, even though it records things internally with much higher precision. The format are the units that you're using. I'm using architectural units. If I was designing a piece of furniture, I'd likely use fractional units, because it won't put feet in the equation at all. It'll keep everything in inches. If I was using the metric system, I would use decimal units. And I could set millimeters or centimeters here. And if I was doing some engineering work, of course, I would select this unit. And it uses decimal feet. Graphic scale comes into play only when you're printing. So you might see that in the print dialog box in SketchUp, or even in another application like Layout, if you buy SketchUp Pro. Some people use AutoCAD as their kind of layout system, and they bring their SketchUp model in there. That works too. Either way, you set the graphic scale when you're printing. That's where you have a chance to say, I want this to be 1/8 of an inch on the paper is equal to 1 foot in the real world, or 1 centimeter on the paper equals 1 meter in the real world, or 1 to 100. Being accurate is another matter altogether, and it has to do with typing in measurements as you draw. For example, let's draw a line. Click a point and release the mouse button. Move the mouse over along the red axis and type in 20 feet, return. The line is drawn appropriately. Note that you don't have to go over here and click in this box to type in a value. A lot of new users tend to want to do that. This box just shows you whatever's happening in SketchUp. I'll move the cursor in this direction and type in 30 feet, return. And the line is drawn. I never needed to click the endpoint. SketchUp did that for me when I entered the value. Another way of drawing lines is like this. Click, drag, release. It seems like I'm done drawing the line, but I still have an opportunity to size it as long as I don't do anything else right now. I'll type in 10 feet, return, and the line is adjusted. I can even go back later and select lines I drew earlier and go into Entity Info by pressing Command-I. Here I see the length of this particular line is 20 feet. I'm going to change that to 5 feet. Return. And it's changed. So the information about the line is stored, and it's accessible only through Entity Info after the fact. You have a moment there when you first draw the line that you have a chance to enter the value in the Value Control Box or Measurements toolbar. But if you miss your opportunity by going to the Select tool or some other tool, the only way you can get to it is by selecting it, going up here, and changing the value in the Entity Info dialog box. There are many ways to enter units in the Measurements toolbar and in Entity Info. Let me begin by talking about architectural units. I'll go to Model Info and change the format to architectural. I'll just erase these lines and start fresh. I'll draw a line across the red axis as a baseline, and I'll pan over here to make a comparison. I'll draw a line starting on edge in the green direction. Type in 12 foot 9. You don't have to put the inch symbol in, which would be the quotation mark symbol, because SketchUp understands that the apostrophe symbol is a delimiter. Anything on the left side of it are feet, and anything on the right side of it are inches. I'll press Return to draw the line. I'll draw another line. This time I'll do click, drag, release to complete the line segment. I'll type 12.75 feet, return, and I have a line of the exact same length. You see how I was able to mix the decimal notation into the feet. You can also use fractions of an inch. So here I'll type in 12 foot 9 space 3/4 inch, return. Coming from AutoCAD, that might be a little bit confusing because in AutoCAD you would be tempted to type in 12 foot 9 dash 3/4. because in AutoCAD there's a rule where you can never have a space. It's equal to a command. That's not true in SketchUp. If I neglect to type in the foot mark at all, SketchUp will assume that I mean inches. Let's give it a try. I'll type in 12 return, and I get a line of 1 foot in length. That's not true in engineering units, which use feet as the default unit. If I typed in 12 return with engineering units, I'd get 12 feet. Finally, I can mix and match units. For example, even though I have architectural units set as what I'm using under model info, I can still use the metric system. I'll draw a line, and I want that to be 3 meters in length, so I'll type 3m return. And there it is, 3-meter line. I'll measure it with the tape measure, and you can see in the measurements toolbar that it measures around 9 foot 10 and 1/8. The tilde means an approximate measure. It's not precise. It would be a precise number of millimeters if I had set metric units as my default. I could similarly use 300 centimeters as my distance by typing 300 cm return, and I get a line of the same length. You can't type in polar, cylindrical, or spherical units in SketchUp. To keep things simple, you just have to create your line of a given length and then rotate it as a separate step. This eliminates all those other coordinate systems which can be confusing for a lot of people.